folks. Thank you for your patience. I just wanted to wait till everyone came in, and of course, keep it casual, keep it intimate. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for showing up tonight. It really is what makes Know Your Neighbor Woburn possible. The neighbors, you all, taking the time out, putting in as much effort as we do, so thank you. Very big thank you to the Know Your Neighbor board, especially Chris and Terry, who have helped make the stories tonight that you're going to hear. Big thank you to Studio Cafe for letting us host. And finally, most importantly, our speakers tonight, who have been getting harassed by me almost daily. I've been sending text after text. When I found out email was not working, but luckily they came out, and I can't stress how hard it is to plan and organize an event with a valedictorian, a law student, nonprofit founders, students in general, but regardless, they made it, so I'm really glad. I just want to give them a thank you and a round of applause. Before we get into their amazing stories tonight, I just wanted to give a bit of background as to how we all got here tonight. Just over a year ago, I was invited to a similar setup as this, a storytelling opportunity, where they wanted to hear about my triumph, or rather, my defeat. Something related to a mayoral campaign, but more than that, I was able to spread the message of what that meant to me. Not just a candidate, but a loss as a person, and how it impacted me, how I dealt with it, how it affected the community, the people around me. And in that moment, I realized the power in storytelling, not only through the audience and the people who interpret the stories, but also to myself. I was able to view what I did and the opportunities that I had been given and I was giving out to others in a completely new way. So fast forward a few months, one of our wonderful senior citizens, Chris DeMayo himself, came to me, and he asked me what I thought about having a storytelling of our own in Woburn. And it was no question. The only issue that I would have had was being able to choose only 6 people to participate. But luckily, I was able to pick those 6, and they're gathered here before you today. The prompt that I gave these speakers was to tell a story about a moment in their life that changed the trajectory. Specifically, coming from youth in our community. A voice that we don't typically hear from, and I'm really happy to be able to share, happy to call upon each one of these folks and understand their stories, and glad that they were willing to share it, because even after listening, I was able to learn something new about each and every single one of them just through reading the story. So I'm very excited, and I think you should be as well, to hear the stories tonight. And like the night I told my story, you all will be able to take away something from each of their stories and relate to it in a way that matters to you. So that's my only advice for the night. Take in the stories, listen, and understand. Thank you. So even though Chris did ask me just to be a moderator, I find myself now here rambling and giving you a story. But I'm going to introduce all the speakers. We have 3 speakers planned, with a short intermission in between, with snacks and beverages provided by the wonderful staff at Studio Cafe, followed by an additional 3 speakers. After the end of the speaking portion, we have some time. I ask that you engage with the youth, with your community, get to know each other, ask questions, and really just spend some time communicating and keeping things casual and intimate. And I'm going to cheat a little bit, but that's only because I have 6 resumes in front of me that I wouldn't even be able to memorize if it was one. So our first speaker of the night is Sam Gary. Sam is a current SCI AmeriCorps Fellow and former suicidologist in training. Prior to completing his undergraduate studies at Bates College, he played an active role in the local and national mental health space through his work with Kick It for a Cause, Born This Way Foundation, Mental Health America, and more. While his path forward seems less certain than it once was, Sam remains committed to serving the communities that have given him so much throughout his adolescence and young adulthood. So, welcome, Sam.
I want to preface this by saying that this will be less of a story about personal triumph, resilience, self-actualization, or how to deal with mental illness. That story has been shared before plenty of times. I definitely don't need to do that again. Instead, I really want to focus on the power of connection and partnership. When at Woburn High, I was really fortunate to be given a platform to share about my experience with suicidality while simultaneously fundraising for organizations that supported suicide prevention efforts. And frankly, I didn't think too much about the recognition I was receiving at the time. I thought that my work within the suicide prevention space would be pretty short-lived, and I remained intent on pursuing a career as a golf teaching professional. And I have no idea where I'd be if that were still the case. In June of 2019, however, about 6 to 7 months after the hype had really worn off, Noah Dhaliwal had reached out to me with an opportunity, with a really interesting opportunity to pursue a community-based project aimed at engaging those around us. I wish I remember what that original text said, but unfortunately it has since been deleted. We ultimately decided to meet just down the street at Woburn Public Library, where we discussed Noah's interest, my previous work in the suicide prevention space, and our connection to sport, both being varsity athletes at Woburn High. And we ultimately decided that a yard game tournament fundraising for suicide prevention was what we wanted to pursue. We left that meeting with a vision and an Instagram story poll asking our peers what game they thought would be best. I think I threw dodgeball out there at first, and then we realized the liability that comes with that, so we kept it to Can Jam and kickball, ultimately choosing kickball. A few months and a lot of hard work later, in October of 2019, we held our first kickball tournament, Kick It 2019. While Noah will talk a bit more about Kick It, I'd be remiss to not mention how impactful it has been on my life since then. Of course, being able to do hands-on work within the nonprofit space has been invaluable, from fundraising to event planning and nonprofit management. What has been most important, though, are the relationships that I've formed over the past 6 years. Noah, Emily, Ari, Talia, Amanda, Mac, who's here today, are dozens of volunteers and partners, hundreds of participants, and even more supporters. You know, I won't remember how much money we raised or many of the event's logistics, but I will remember that one afternoon that we spent at the Dhaliwal's house preparing orders for our first run of merchandise, and Nancy, his mom, complimenting my ability to fold t-shirts. That was very flattering. That's right. I will remember confiding in Noah, perhaps somewhat embarrassingly, before presenting our scholarship, which we did in lieu of our 2020 event. I actually got so nervous to where, if you're familiar with certificates, the area where the awarder signs their name, I totally forgot to ask Noah to do that. So if you ever run into images of our recipients, you'll see that his name just isn't signed there. That's my fault, not his. And I will also be able to remember being able to connect with so many familiar faces at each event. I met with Noah for coffee a few weeks ago, and were really interested in how Kick It each year kind of became the best version of a high school reunion that you could possibly imagine. Being able to connect with not only our own friends, but friends of friends and also other community members in a way that really brought everyone together. These cherished moments are what truly inspire me and encourage me to continue pursuing this work and giving back to the community that has served me and us. And while I'm no longer at Kick It in an official capacity, my experience there has helped me develop into the person I am today while simultaneously making a legitimate impact on the Woburn and suicide prevention communities. And to think that none of it would have happened if Noah and I had never met in the library. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And I myself have been to a few of the Kick It games. Very fun. I don't know if I can say that they were totally fair because we didn't win any of the years we went, but I recommend for any folks considering. Our next speaker, as you've heard, is Noah Dhaliwal. Noah is the president and co-founder of Kick It for a Cause and a current 1L at Suffolk University Law School. He attended Boston College for his undergraduate education and has a strong passion for both service and community building. Welcome, Noah.
All right. So when I had brought that idea to Sam in the library that hot day in June, I had no idea that I'd be taking a significant step towards something that would become bigger than either of us could have ever imagined. Coming up with the idea was easy, for lack of a better term, but communicating it and executing it was where the road got a bit tougher for me. To me, Sam's story, which inspired my idea for Kick It, was really impactful and really hit home. And part of me knew that he would be on board, but the nerves still kind of hit. An idea like this seems like an obvious slam dunk, but anyone here who might be an anxious overthinker knows that you start poking holes in it in your own mind before you even get there. So I was able to quiet the thoughts for a bit, and I met with Sam, and luckily, as we know, Sam was extremely receptive and immediately on board. But those thoughts never truly went away, and they reared their ugly head once again closer to the actual event. So it was about a week before our registration deadline, and we had a total of 2 teams signed up for the event. And I remember anxiously sitting, staring at that damn Google Sheet every night, and that's when my doubt started to set in. That's when those irrational thoughts started to take over. Was I way out of my league trying to make this happen? Am I even the right person to do this? Is this cause just not important to people? And why the hell did we choose kickball? This barrage of self-sabotaging thoughts continued to plague my mind each night. Constantly checking that sheet, hitting the refresh button, checking every notification that would come across my phone, hoping it would be someone who was ready to come with a team. It was demoralizing. Thinking that all the effort that we had put into organizing this event was for nothing. But that was when the floodgates opened. Team after team rushing in the night before the deadline. We went from 2 teams to 12 in a matter of just 30 minutes. And just like that, I was invigorated. I remember literally jumping in my bedroom with joy. All that doubt had faded into the ether, and everything felt so clear. We had an opportunity in front of us to make a difference, and we weren't planning to let that slip. Every year now, I am faced with the same vicious cycle of doubt and excitement. And you'd think I'd have learned by now. Even 6 years into the process, I still have those feelings, but now I use them as motivation, as a way to push myself even further for this organization and this community. I use them as a way to ensure this cause gets the attention it deserves and needs. I may not be the leading expert in research for suicidal ideation or the most skilled event planner, but I truly care about this cause, and to me, that should be enough. In the same position where I once questioned if I was the right person to get involved with this, I now ask myself, why not me? Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Our next speaker is a senior in high school and the current valedictorian of the class of 2025. She is the vice president of DECA, co-founder of the Community Food Project, and leader of Survive the Drive Learn. She plays soccer and basketball and enjoys spending time with friends and family. She's planning on studying nursing in hopes to become a pediatric nurse practitioner. Our next speaker is Victoria Pimentel.
Throughout my life, I've never felt proud of my achievements, only relieved. When I got a good grade on a test, I felt no sense of pride. When I was playing really well in a basketball game and it was halftime, or I was waiting for an award for my academics, I just want it to be over so I could breathe. I specifically remember in elementary school, I took on the role of the fairy godmother in our Cinderella play, and I made the whole audience laugh with one of my lines, and they were supposed to laugh. They weren't laughing at me. But normally you'd feel proud of yourself, and you'd feel accomplished that you perfectly delivered a line and stood out in front of the crowd. But I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel happiness. I didn't feel satisfaction. I only felt relief. And in my mind, it's always been an obligation to achieve these things, like I'm expected to. My achievements haven't felt like successes at all. They just haven't felt like failures. And these failures have led to extreme disappointment and lots of tears. But my successes have felt like the bare minimum, that actually if I don't succeed, then I am a failure. Now this pressure was never external, never coming from my family or my friends or my teachers. It always came from the inside. In fact, I found myself recently not even wanting to add that I was current valedictorian in my bio until I realized that Omar had put it on the flyer. But not so much because I thought I was bragging, more so because I never used to take pride in that achievement. I honestly tried to tell as few people as possible when I found out. I felt like I didn't deserve that title, like I didn't work hard enough or didn't have a high enough GPA, which sounds crazy. But the internal pressure that I put on myself was the thing that led to me becoming top in the class. And my lack of pride was the thing that motivated me to achieve these expectations or these obligations. And I was constantly in a battle with my own mind. And I realized that that wasn't the right way to do things. And it took me 17 years to learn that. But I realized that I was running alongside the person who was accomplishing all these things. And I had to find a way to become that person. And my shift in perspective was a huge turning point in my life. And I give a big thanks to my family and my closest friends. But mostly I give credit to my older sister, Sabrina, who's a freshman at UMass Amherst right now, and she was just like me. She was constantly drowning herself in internal pressure, and she never felt like she was good enough. But while at college, despite some ups and downs, is when she really began to thrive. For her, college was no longer based on living up to these unrealistic expectations or succeeding because it was an obligation. Instead, it was, instead, it was doing what's best for yourself and taking pride in how far you've come. In our family group chat every day, she sends pictures and messages updating us on her events, whether she's going to her nutrition lecture or showing us a picture of her lunch. And I always wondered why she did this. Maybe it was to feel closer to home or to keep us in the loop. But I realized it's because she takes pride in everything that she does. Whether it's going to the gym before I even wake up for school in the morning or getting an 100 on her first chem exam, she takes pride in her daily accomplishments. And seeing her become this version of herself subconsciously changed my entire perspective. There's a quote that says, "There's no better friend than a sister," and she's living proof. Without even realizing, she released the ties that pressure had on her, while also releasing the hold that pressure had on me. And she allowed me to feel confident in my achievements, no matter how small or large. She truly is my hero. Just don't tell her I said that. She doesn't really need the ego boost. Now, I know my constant feeling of relief will never really go away, and that's not always a bad thing. But now, when I achieve things, I'm not only feeling relief, but I'm also feeling proud of myself. And now, instead of living with the idea that success is an obligation, I can now just live and appreciate my achievements and my successes. And with that, I'm extremely proud and relieved to share my commitment to Northeastern University in the fall for nursing. And that's something I never would have wanted to share to anybody a couple months ago. So I'd like to thank you all for listening, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, Victoria. And I'm especially a bit biased because Northeastern is my alma mater, but great stories. So our next speaker, not to be confused with our first Noah, this Noah is the founder of Inclusive Eats, a local nonprofit dedicated to combating food insecurity by providing culturally diverse ingredients to underrepresented communities that is now in 3 states. His advocacy for inclusive food initiatives and his commitment to raising awareness about cultural representation have made significant impacts on how communities approach food insecurity. Please welcome me in welcoming Noah Sheldon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored. But before we begin, does anyone just know what feijoada? No, I know Vicky, you know feijoada. It is a Brazilian dish, and essentially it's made from, the scraps of a pig, snout, what else? Pigtails in there too, the hooves, basically the unwanted parts. And for slaves in Brazil back in the day, this is what they had to resort to, and they just combined it with flour, water, cassava, black beans, and that's how feijoada was born. And feijoada means a lot to me because I grew up cooking with my mom almost every night, cooking a lot of Brazilian dishes, and that was one of our favorite ones to make. And and I found that cooking was a way for me to connect back to my Brazilian heritage. I'm son of an immigrant. My dad is actually American from Kansas, surprisingly, so it's an interesting mix. But you could find that it's hard to go back to your roots, so that's why I relied on cooking. And there's gonna be a lot of like almost mini stories in this, but one day my mom invited me to a free cooking class, and I jumped at the offer naturally. I wanted to, have fun, show off my skills, and I just didn't stop to think about why the class would have been free. And class was in Lynn. It was hosted by the Food Project, and inspired a lot by them. And this was like earlier in my high school years. And at the class, I started to piece together why it might be free. I saw a lot of kids, most of them younger than me, and it was a Latin class focused on teaching these kids recipes from their culture that they otherwise might not have known. Maybe their parents are working multiple jobs, or simply people don't have access to culturally relevant ingredients when they are food insecure. And this hit home for me a lot because I started to see just how privileged I was just being able to cook with my mom and learn that part of my culture. And I started to think, like, how can I help with this? And so I did catering, and I started to work with nonprofits to cater their community events for free for Brazilian churrasco, so people can experience that Brazilian culture, but without the cost. And nonprofit would just pay for the food, and it felt rewarding to do this at first, but I started to realize that I'm spreading my love for my culture and my love for food and cooking, but people still don't have the opportunity to do that themselves. And it was after this one catering gig, I went to the restroom. There's a food pantry, and I just saw walls of aluminum, hamburger helper, Kraft mac and cheese, and I realized that even when food has no cost at all, with food insecurity and food aid, there's still some lack of representation, and that's when I decided to found Inclusive Eats, and started off as just simple model, partner with pantries, provide them, donate ingredients from specific cultures according to the demographics of the town. But it quickly evolved into more advocacy and awareness initiatives, because real change starts with understanding, and that's that's how you create change and see each other. That's the most important part. So a big part is that people just don't know, with donating, that even I was guilty of this back at like elementary school with the food drives. You just go into your cupboard, you grab the first cans you see that you don't really use. And that's like this donation culture that could really have a big impact just by understanding and seeing. So we, Inclusive Eats, have done a lot of these events. We're very proud of our community cooking class that was actually initially funded by Social Capital Inc. through a grant, so thank you to SEI. And it was a great success. The first class was featured on CBS Boston, and it just gave us so much more recognition. We did the numbers. It was around half a million views across New England saw Inclusive Eats mission, and then we received a lot of donations too. So that's something that, in terms of awareness, that we're very proud of, and we've come come along in such a far way. We were awarded Louis Gaskins Humanitarian Civil Rights Award by the MTA, which was a great honor. And as Omar said, we are in 3 states now, New York and New Mexico. So it's definitely been a journey, but when it comes down to it, at these events, strangers becoming friends, people celebrating together, cooking together, eating together, it makes me see, like, all these sleepless nights that I've had. It's all worth it, because you really get a chance to learn from your community and make an impact from your community. And despite all my work, there's still underrepresentation. I've only scratched the surface, and we need help of everybody. And that's why, no matter if it's a community dinner, a cooking class, throughout my life, I want to dedicate myself to creating spaces where we could just see each other and understand each other. And that's a lot of what Know Your Neighbor Woburn wants to do. It's like it's knowing your neighbor and seeing them. So to me, this is the only way to fostering a more aware and equitable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Our next speaker has a special connection to me, potentially, literally. I have the pleasure of being his older brother. This next speaker is the senior class secretary for the class of 2025, as well as the leader of the Embrace Club. His topic explores a pivotal moment in his journey, leaving the basketball team during his sophomore year after playing the sport his entire childhood. This decision marked a significant turning point, reshaping his path and redefining his sense of identity and purpose. Welcome, Momo Mohudin.
Hello, everyone. There are always times in life where you act a certain way or you do a certain thing because you feel like you have to. And you feel like society has given you that role, and all you want to do is just play that role. And that's kind of how I felt with playing basketball, and which ultimately led to me quitting my sophomore year, and that's what my story is about. So my freshman year, I made the varsity team after playing basketball my entire life. I loved it, and as the season progressed, I realized it wasn't something I really was enjoying. But I decided to stick with it because I've done it my entire life. And that's kind of what everyone knew me as. And sophomore year came around, and once again I tried out for the team, made the team again. And as the season was going, I realized I really didn't like it, and I really just didn't want to play. So I ultimately decided to kind of make a rash decision and quit in the start of the season. After I quit, I felt kind of guilty because I felt like I was disappointing the people around me. I was supposed to be this good basketball player who made the varsity team when he was 14, and now at 15, I'm not even a basketball player at all. And I realized I had a lot of free time after this, so I was trying to find things to fill that free time, and I realized how much basketball truly absorbed my identity. And it made me realize how it related to other high school athletes or even collegiate athletes or professional athletes. You spend your entire life crafting this one thing, honing this one skill, and then all of a sudden one day it comes to an end. And that really had me question if I did the right thing. And that had me also questioning if you had to be identified as something, or is it possible to be identified as multiple things? So I decided to just improve at the things I was currently doing, which was school. So I decided to improve at school and get more involved. I decided to join some clubs and run for class office. That year I ended up winning, and I still hold that title today. And I'm also a leader of one of the clubs that I ended up joining. It also led to me being able to work more hours and do things that I couldn't do beforehand with less stress, like go outside and just casually play basketball without having to be the best one there or try to be the best one there. And it really made me realize that it's okay to walk away from things that you don't like doing, and you shouldn't have to do things just because everybody wants you to do something. And I kind of viewed it as not giving up on basketball, but being more true to myself. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is a senior currently at Woburn Memorial High School and will be attending Northeastern University in the fall. And to answer David Crowley's question during intermission, I'm not recruiting them for Northeastern. He is a student leader for Embrace, a member of Spanish Honor Society and National Honor Society, a captain for the boys varsity basketball team, and an intern for the group Leaders for an Equitable Tomorrow, a group that works with Woburn nonprofit SCI to support teen and overall mental health in the community. He is here today to talk about gratitude and a defining moment that changed his perspective about his own life. Please welcome Jacoby Altman.
Hello, how's everyone doing? It's amazing to see everyone that came, and thank you, Know Your Neighbor, for having me on this panel. To start off with my story, when I first thought about what to talk about, as an athlete and someone who's done somewhat well in school, I immediately thought of academics and basketball, things I've been passionate about, things I've worked hard on. And although they're definitely outlets of my general transformation as a person, I had to do some deeper thinking on what the moment truly was itself. And that started around I'd say in my middle school and early high school years. I was a kid who was easily influenced, easily swayed by others, and I'd say I had a mindset where I would feel sorry for myself a lot when things went wrong. And the moment that, and I feel like I couldn't express my feelings to the potential, or my ideas to the potential I knew I could. And to be honest, I felt lost as a person, and it literally took one moment, a small conversation with me and the strongest person I know in my life, my grandma, to change everything. So to give you background on her, let me introduce you guys to my grandma. I call her my Ye, which is Cambodian, or the language they speak in Cambodia, Khmer, for her grandma. She's here today, so thank you for coming. To give you some background on her story, my Ye grew up in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, the capital of Cambodia, and her childhood was actually a quite pleasant, calm childhood until her teen years hit. During that time, in the mid-1970s to early 80s, due to tensions rooting from the Vietnam War and whatnot, there was a violent military group that rose in Cambodia called the Khmer Rouge, and they took over the capital, took over the country, and they committed genocide, killing 3 million of their own people in order to achieve their goals of power. And for my grandmother, her life literally changed overnight. Their takeover of Phnom Penh happened in one day. She went from a high school student with a loving family to someone who would never step foot in school again, and not because she had a choice. She went from someone who would eat dinner with her family every night to working in labor camps the whole day. And she was doing this with 4 kids in Cambodia. And then when she escaped the war and came here, she had another kid, so 5 kids in total. And the suffering didn't end in Cambodia. When she came here, she had to raise 5 children, working long shifts in chicken processing factories and helping my grandfather clean offices at night. But this was the version of my Ye that I heard from the story she told me. To me, my Ye, when I was born and my parents were working, my Ye raised me. I woke up to her feeding me oatmeal every day when I was a kid, and to her always being there when I was home. She would always be outside watching me and my brother mess around playing basketball or probably arguing. She was always there and telling me stories about her past, which is why I know so much now, and cooking probably some of the best cooking I've ever had in my life. Chris, if you made this a potluck event, I promise all of you guys would have been able to taste her egg rolls. They're amazing. But while I always heard Ye was strict with my mom and my aunts and my uncle when she was a mom, I never got to experience that with myself. My Ye always spoiled me to making sure I had extra food on my plate, yelling at my mom she didn't put extra food on my plate, and just making sure I was stuffing my face with every meal. And she would even warn me to get off the computer when my dad was coming home to stop playing video games, or else I'd get in trouble, because he speeds in the driveway pretty fast. But with that being said, me and my Ye have a bond that goes beyond words. And although there's a language barrier sometimes, I feel like she knows me better than any person, regardless of words being spoken or not. She could always tell when I lie about doing my homework. She just knows me. But so for that reason, during one of our talks, this was around my sophomore year, 2.5 years ago, I had a moment of realization and transformation when I was talking to her. She's the strongest person I know, always puts a smile on her face, always is the toughest, even though she's the oldest. And she was telling me a story about her dad in the labor camp, how the soldiers came and they lied and said he was going to go build a quote-unquote bridge, but instead they took him to a mass grave where he ended up passing away simply because of the fact that he was part of Western society because he was a doctor. So, and in that moment, I saw the strongest person in my life breaking down with tears going down her face, something I've never seen before. And that moment really stuck with me for so many reasons. And it helped me realize, like, there's no reason to feel sorry for yourself. There's always things you could be grateful for. And what I learned from that is you have to find gratitude in your inconveniences. And that practice I got from that is whenever I have an inconvenience or a mishap in my life, I pause and I think of 3 things I'm grateful for. Because on my worst days, there are people out there in the world who would be their best days. And when through that strong and happy face my grandma puts on every day, I know deep down that there's a little girl who still misses her father. So that moment truly grounded me, and I continue to find gratitude in my inconveniences, and she taught me how to be grateful and resilient. So this story doesn't mean that my challenges or your challenges in your life aren't valid. I'm not saying that at all. But I think finding gratitude in one's challenges can bring on inner happiness about your everyday life. And not even just your challenges, just in general in life. I think it can bring on greater happiness. And in regards to challenges, it could help bring on solutions too if you just pause and ground yourself for a second. So if there's 2 things I hope you guys will take away from this is that next time you go through any type of hardship, just remember to stay grateful no matter what. And lastly, kind of unrelated to the whole gratitude aspect, but there's definitely family members and elders in your life who have stories to tell you, wisdom to share, something to say, regardless of if there's a language barrier or not. And I'm just asking you to listen because you can learn so much from it. And maybe one day, Mr. DeMeo will invite you to speak on one of his panels. So, thank you, Ye, for everything in my life. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacoby, for a beautiful story. And to really just jump on the back of that, like he said, and for the same reason that you all are here tonight, there's stories for each and every single one of you to share. And maybe not at a Know Your Neighbor event, but within your homes, amongst your friends, your family, the people closest to you, people that you don't know, strangers. But understanding that every single person has something that matters to them, something that's important to them, something that you might be able to relate to. And being willing to listen to that will change the way you view yourself, will change the way you view your life, the people around you, and really just create a more understanding society if we can all hear and listen to each other. So once again, I want to give another round of applause to our 6 wonderful speakers tonight. Our board, our hosts, and most importantly, all of you for making it possible, for filling up the room, and for really listening, for preaching and sitting here and taking the time to listen to these stories that our wonderful speakers were able to share. And hopefully, you each are able to take something away from these stories, something that stood out to you, something that matters to you, and better understanding the youth in your community. Thank you.